Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in?
Hi and welcome to my world. My name is Stig Ulrichsen and today I have a very special guest. She's coming all the way from California just to visit us here in Denmark. The reason for her visit is a guy called Elvis Presley, but she's been doing so many other things than just being together with Elvis Presley. She's an actress, she's a stunt woman, she's singing. Is there anything you don't do, Mindi Miller? Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. No, I started very young. My parents were both in show business, and I was adopted at birth, so I did not know that in the beginning. And later, I found out that my father was a very big stuntman in Hollywood and a character actor. He was born in Poland. He met my mother in California, in Los Angeles, and she was born in Spain, and she was half Spanish and half German. They met, and I am first generation born in California from my parents. So I didn't know I was adopted until I was about 7. And then slowly as I grew up, I found out that the puzzle was being put together because I started acting at a very young age. I was singing, I was dancing at a very young age. I started modeling at 13. I started entering beauty pageants, teenage beauty pageants at 13. And I didn't know why I could sing. I had a voice. And I later found out that my grandmother on my mother's side was an opera singer, and that my mom was a singer and dancer, and she met my father on a movie set in Hollywood. And so I'm the culmination of that. And I didn't know why I could do all these things. And I didn't know why I could do stunt work. I had this body that could just do all this kind of stuff. And I started with Shotokan. I learned Kempo when I met Elvis. He had me take from Ed Parker. And I was, doing gymnastics, stunts, firearms, did all my own stunts in my films, nunchucks, you do the whole thing, and sword fighting, fencing, you name it.
Yeah, so you can do everything actually.
I can't do everything, but I do try. I like to do as much as I possibly can. I'm a very active person, and I've always been that way. So I have my parents to thank for it. I think it's absolutely DNA.
Even though you did not know them?
I had no idea, no, nothing. I never met my father, I never met my mother. And a lot of people say I should write a book because they said you have a very intriguing history. And so when I found out about my family and I found out about my father, as it turns out, he ended up working with a lot of the same people in the films that I worked with. And they did not know he had a daughter, and I did not know that they knew my father. When I found this out from people that knew him, we were absolutely shocked. We just had no idea at all. And then I found out that he lived about 1.5 miles away from me a lot of my adult life. And I was, that's a tough one, because I often wondered, did I pass him in the street somewhere? Did I maybe even meet him and not even realize it? And some of the actors that knew my dad, that did films with him, especially the Westerns, he was called the bullwhip man of Hollywood. And he was the guy that flogged the Hunchback of Notre Dame. There's a big flogging scene where he takes, the whip and he's just whipping. But he came from Poland and made all his own whips by hand. And I didn't know there was a whole art and a whole science to bullwhipping and to making them. And one of his biggest fans found me and said, I am one of your dad's biggest fans. His name was David Kashner. And before he came from Poland to this country, the name was Kashner. And my cousin, named Sam Kashner, whom I've never met, is a big writer for Vanity Fair, which is a big magazine in America. And he writes very large articles, big articles. One of the biggest ones I think he did was on Marilyn Monroe. It was like 10 or 12 pages in Vanity Fair. His wife, or I think his former wife, was also a novelist. So, you know, my dad's side of the family was very academic. You know, teachers, mathematicians, librarians, very learned people, and attorneys, you know, that whole thing. But he came over here and he started to do stunt work and character actor, and did all the bullwhips. And so when you see Halle Berry in Catwoman, and she's doing all the whipping, the people that taught her learned from my dad, and those same people taught Harrison Ford.
You do it too, or what?
This guy came to me, he found me, he said, you must be really, really talented. He says, I want to take you out and show you what your dad did. So apparently he followed my father for his whole career, and he took out a bunch of whips. He took me to where my dad used to actually practice, which was across the street from the Hollywood Bowl. And there was, I think in the 30s and 40s and the early 50s, there was an area that had this old kind of house on it. And it's still standing there, and you can tell it's very old, and I don't know if they've made it a kind of old Hollywood museum or not, but he took me in this whole park area, and he said, well, he said, you may have a problem, you're left-handed. I said, yes, I am. So he was trying to show me how to fling, you know, and it's all in the wrist, he said. But the interesting thing is, I don't know if you ever heard of her, she's a comedian, Carol Burnett.
Yes,
She's very famous, and one of my dad's last jobs was when he was about 75 or 76 years old. And my mother and I were actually sitting watching this particular show, not realizing that was my real father. And she had asked for my dad because they were doing a whipping scene, but it was supposed to be comedy. And she had on this Spanish kind of, you know, outfit with the long skirt on and the big Spanish headdress and the wig and the top and the big sleeves, and all the dancing people would come out. The gentlemen, the conquistadors, you know, would come out, and the ladies would come out with the little flamingo skirts and things, and they come out and they bring Carol Burnett out. So Carol Burnett is standing here, and way across the stage is my dad. And he's in a Spanish outfit, you know, with the hat and the little dangle balls and the whole thing. And she starts singing. Now, Carol Burnett is not a singer, but she does it because she loves it and she makes it funny. So it's part of her comedy routine. So she starts in on this song, and as the song starts, my dad is supposed to start taking one piece of clothing off of her at each moment. Well, when you're from here to the corner of this room, that's a long ways away. So he had a really, really long bullwhip. Now the thing is you can take off somebody's head, you can take out somebody's eyes, you can maim somebody with these whips. They're absolutely deadly. And they were used, you know, in Spain a lot. They were used in old Europe as a form of defense and protection, actually. So there was one point where he starts at the top of her head, and he takes off the top of her head. And every time he does it, she's supposed to give a kind of, you know, reaction, a crazy, silly reaction. Then he takes off her wig, and then she does this with her hands. Well, she had on like a lingerie outfit underneath the whole costume. So little by little, he's supposed to whip and whip and whip. And, you know, while she's singing, he's standing there trying to figure out with the bullwhip, which, you know, because he could have just
I
shredded.
have to say, she was a brave woman.
I was just going to say that. She was really brave. And she said, I don't want anybody else but Dave Kashner, because he was the man known. He's the one that excelled in that particular thing that he did. It was an absolute art. I don't know that you have many people, even in the world today, that do that. It's a lost art. It really is. It's a lot of practicing, and but that was his thing, with a lot of horseback riding and gymnastics and stunt work. So I had no idea that my body was exactly like my dad's. I have pictures of my father's body. If you take your thumb and put it over his head, that's my body.
Okay.
So I had no idea.
It's amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
That's a very interesting story. I have
Yeah.
one question for you. Did you ever learn to know your biologically mother also? Or?
No, I looked for her. And in the state of California, where I was born, in Los Angeles, there was a government rule that if your parents were giving you up for adoption, they would sign a piece of paper that if the child, meaning me, the birth child, would come looking for them, that if they did not want to be contacted or located, that the adoption agency was not allowed to give the birth child any information. Now, I had gone to the adoption agency and written them for the state of California and said, this is my name, this is the date I was born, I want to find my parents. And you have to have some kind of a name. So my mother that adopted me at birth said, you know, I think his name was Dave Kashner. So I gave the information, possibly his name was Dave Kashner, this is my name, this is the date I was born in LA, all these things. They then go back into the archives and look through. If the parent has passed away, the birth parent, they are allowed at that time to release information. So the third time I had written to them, they finally released the information. And it was, you know, I mean, to be an adult and go 30, 35 years and not know if you look like anyone or you resemble anyone or if you're like anyone, and you really feel very alone in the world. I mean, adopted children have a whole other sensibility because they have nothing to relate to. You know, I won't say it's a problem, but I think the rules and regulations really need to be changed because it's, as a birth parent or birth parents, where you decide to give up a child, you're not thinking really, maybe you're thinking about the child that, well, we can't give the child a good life, we don't have the money, or we can't educate the child properly. But the child usually 95% of the time wants to know who their parents are.
Yeah, of course.
They want something or someone to relate to. And so just to receive information, I had no pictures. I had nothing until later on when I started contacting people and I looked, you know, and found the film work that he did. I bought the films. I sent away for films. I watched him. I saw him. I saw the resemblance of someone. I saw why I could do certain things then, and it was completely DNA.
And you're in that way lucky that he was filmed because
Yes.
many children will never have that possibility.
You wouldn't have that.
How old were you when you were told that you were adopted?
I was 7 when I was told that I was adopted. My mother told me, and I was in shock, absolute shock.
Because you grew up
not knowing,
thinking, this is my mom and dad.
Yeah, well, and my adopted mother was married 5 times.
Okay.
She was married once before I was born, and then 4 times after I was born as I grew up. So I consequently never married. You know, when you go through all of that, the outcome can be devastating, or you can say, you know what, maybe this is not all it's cracked up to be. Maybe I wouldn't be so good at marriage because of what I've seen. And you know, what happens to a child, we don't always realize what happens to children. The psychological damage that can be done can be very permanent unless you work through it and you go to get help. And it's important, you know, when parents separate or they're fighting in front of children or there's a divorce, it's absolutely vital to be able to help heal that child because it's devastating to a child.
And what about the father who adopted you also? Did you continue having him as a father?
No, when my mother divorced, well, when I was born, we went to live in Hawaii for the first 4 years. We left the mainland, and I grew up in Hawaii. And he stayed in Hawaii, and my mother and I came back to Los Angeles. So when I was probably 18 or 19, I asked my mom where he was, my first father, and she said he's still in Hawaii. And I went to see him and find him. And it was, he was older, you know, and it was difficult. I don't remember even a lot about him now. He was very kind. He was very nice. And he said, I always loved you. He said, and I wanted to be with you. He said, but your mother wouldn't let me. And there are always, you know, I say to people, there are 3 sides to every story, or 3 sides to the truth. Your truth, my truth, and the truth. And somewhere in there, you have to find, you have to read between the lines, just like if you read a book. And you read lots of books, especially about Elvis. You have to read between the lines because a lot of things in the books may not be true. A lot of things may be fabricated or embellished to sell the books, you know. So meeting him was vital for me to get some questions answered. And, you know, he said, I always wanted to see you. He said, it was your mother that wouldn't let me.
Yeah, it's terrible when parents are like that.
This is the thing. You see, they're not thinking of the child. They're thinking of themselves, and that's really selfish.
But you kept close to your mother?
I did. Well, she's all I had.
Yeah.
You know, so I grew up very, very independent. I mean, extremely independent.
Then the interest for what you should do in life, where did that come from?
You know, I have come to the conclusion, and I don't know, in college I was a psych major. I wanted to get my master's in psychology, especially child psychology, because of what I had gone through. I wanted to help children that are going through the same thing. And my minor was philosophy. So I've always been a very, very deep thinker, very otherworldly. My head has always been in the clouds. My feet haven't always been planted firmly on the ground. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that, you know, we live between 2 worlds, or 3, in multi-dimensional worlds, actually. So I thought, you know, Mindi, keep your feet on the ground, keep your head in the clouds, stay rational, stay logical, but you can still be a dreamer, you know. I think, again, a lot of it has to do with you are who you are. When you come out of the womb, you are who you're going to be. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't change things about yourself, that you of course, you're going to learn and grow, and the whole purpose in being here is to learn the lessons that God wants you to learn. He puts us all here for a reason. And to be on what I call, or what we call in esoteric psychology, the physical plane, is to learn your lessons as a human being, so that when your spirit leaves your body, which is a shell, at the hierarchy of the 7, and the world is a dividend of 7 days in a week, 7th heaven, everything is a dividend of 7. It's quite incredible when you look into it. But so that your soul can rise to where it's going to be based on what you do here. Now, a lot of people won't believe that, and that's okay, because we all have different belief systems, and we all think different ways, which makes people interesting. But looking back on my life now as I do, I think a lot of it is really predetermined. I really do. I think you don't know why you like something at 3 years old or 4 years old. You don't know why your taste buds don't want to eat green beans, but they just don't. You don't know why you want to go ride your bike, but you don't want to ride a horse. You just know that, well, I don't want to eat that. Well, I don't want to ride a horse. Well, I don't want to learn to ride a motorcycle. Why do we? We just do.
So your interest in life came very early.
Very.
Interesting for spiritual things.
Very.
But also, when did it come up for you? When did you decide that you want to become an actress instead of being a psycholog? Is it called psycholog?
Well, a psychologist. There's a psychoanalyst.
Yeah. I should practice my English a little bit.
No, listen, I don't speak, I speak a little Nihongo, which is Japanese. I speak a little Italian, Spanish, French, but I don't speak any Danish. It's a very different language to learn because it doesn't sound like anything. And most of the languages I know are derivatives of Latin. Italian, German, Spanish, French, but Scandinavian languages are completely different. I can't correlate them with anything American, you know.
That's true.
Yeah. But
back to the question.
Oh yeah, the question.
When did you decide that it was not into psychiatry?
Oh, the psychiatry, yes.
Psychiatry. And you wanted to become an actress instead?
I remember very vividly standing at the sink in the kitchen when I was a kid. And I was doing the dishes for my mom. And I was always emulating something or someone on television. Because we grew up in the television age, you know, the 1950s. We had maybe 4 channels, black and white. We didn't have cable TV and color and all those things, you know, so it was a very different time. And I thought, well, this is, you know, this media is fascinating. And I used to stand there at the kitchen sink and pretend I was doing a commercial where I'm washing the dishes and I take all the suds and I go, you know, let's see, Dawn will make your dishes beautiful and sparkling and white. I remember my mom coming in. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing a commercial, Mom." And I was a kid, you know. She said, "Well, don't bank on that." She said, "Very few people make it as an actor, and you have to be very talented, and it's a very tough business." And she was, you know, she was honest. She was getting me ready for it. She says, "You better think of other things to do alongside that." But I always wanted to do it. And I've told people, and I've told friends of mine that are parents of kids, well, my child thinks she wants to go into it or he wants to go into it. And I say, you know, if they're not absolutely passionate, I mean passionate about the entertainment industry, you won't make it. Because you have to give up almost everything. I gave up relationships, I gave up my life, I gave up schooling, I gave up everything to want to be in the entertainment industry. And you have to have a passion for it. There has to be something burning inside of you to create, whether it's a song, whether it's a dance, whether you have something to give as an actor, you know, and you want to tell a story and you're able to cry and you're able to laugh and you're able to relate to complete strangers and think, well, that's my husband of 30 years, and maybe you just met him the day before. You have to be a very open human being.
Did you go to acting school? Or?
I did. I started very young. I went to a children's acting theater, actually. I was probably about 11 or 12, and I would take the bus because my mother worked, and I didn't have any other way there. So I would take a bus into Van Nuys. It's an area in Los Angeles. And there was a children's theater by a man named William Jarvis who had come out of New York. And he started this children's theater. The children were the actors, and only children could see the shows. So the parents would drop the kids off and then go wait in the car or go somewhere and pick the kids back up. And they would serve popcorn and orange juice and what was it, punch or soda pop or something to the kids while they were watching live theater by children. So we did a show called The Drunkard, and it came out of New York. It was an adult theater kind of program, and he made it into a children's show. Then we did Little Women. We did, I can't even think of all the stuff we did. But we were kids. We'd sit in the front row before we'd go on stage. We'd learn how to breathe, your breath control, eye control, don't blink all the time. If you're going to talk to someone, look at them straight in the eye. Yeah, stare at them. You know, if you're going to be serious, a little squint of the eye. I mean, all these things in acting that are super important. And so as a child, I was learning all the time, learning. And then as an adult, you continue to take classes and things.
How old were you at that time? What was your age when you started?
I was probably 11 or 12.
Yeah, that's very young.
It's young. I'm telling you, I knew from the time I was born what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I think a lot of kids do. And then there are other kids that are 20 and they'll say, well, I'm in college. And I'll say, oh, what's your major? Well, I'm just a general. Okay, well, what do you think you want to do? I don't know. They don't know. And that's okay. But it's like, you better get on something because, you know, the world is very fast moving and you have to have a lot of money to live these days. No matter where you are, it takes a lot of money to live. You know.
And from that early age, did you then play a lot of theater or what did you do after?
I did a lot of theater growing up, but I really wanted to do television and I really wanted to do film. I loved going to the films. It was my getaway to watch a big screen and be taken over by this huge screen, and it put me in another world.
It's also 2 different ways to act, right? It's
completely.
Theater you have to go all through in the evening or daytime, whatever, and a movie is very short now you're on. We record for next 2 hours the same
Yeah.
line over and over again.
Yeah.
We need 1 minute for the
Yeah.
movie. You know, it's two different things.
It's three different ways of acting. I mean, television is very different. Daytime drama, soap operas, completely different way of acting. Probably more melodramatic, over the top. Film, you know, is another whole different thing. And theater actors actually do pretty well in film, because a theater actor is usually really well trained, especially the British. I think the Brits have some of the best actors in the world, you know, from the time of Shakespeare, and proper breathing and proper dialogue and things like that. I mean, when you're able to do a Shakespearean play, Othello or Romeo and Juliet, I mean, your breath control, your speaking, your Latin, I mean, all these things come into play, as opposed to an American actor that gets, you know, ends up being on a TV series. It's a completely different thing. So you have people like Sir Laurence Olivier, Anthony Hopkins. God, I could go on and on about the British actors. I think they're brilliant. I think they're probably our best actors in the world. But they're theater trained. You know, so for them, when they come in front of a camera, it's more learning your eye light, where to hit your mark, where to look or where not to look. On the stage, you're hitting marks, and it's a very different medium, and your voice has to carry, and you don't get a takeover. You don't have a you know, a board. Take three, you know,
And
you don't
get
have
a clear
that.
response from the audience when you're standing.
It's immediate. It's absolutely immediate. So it's very, very different. But I liked the TV end of it, but it's much quicker than film.
And when did you succeed getting into the TV that you dreamed about? How old were you?
Well, the first thing I did that I can remember, I think I did some silly reality show we had at that time called The Dating Game. And it wasn't anything acting, it was going on, but they wanted you to be up and bubbly, and you know, you sit, there's a partition down the middle and the girl is over here, and you have three guys over there, or you had three girls over there and you had the guy over here, and you would ask, they would ask you questions, and or they would ask you, I would ask them questions, and I'd say, number two, you know, what would you do on our first date, and how would you impress me, and things like that. There's no acting, but they'd want you to be animated. So it's a bit of acting, and then you'd start, so I think I was 16, and then by the time I think I was 17 or 18, I was dancing and go-go dancing, with the big thing was go-go dancing and all that, and I had been ballet trained and jazz trained, modern dance trained. So I got on a show called Truth or Consequences, which was, the host was Bob Barker, who later did a show called The Price is Right, that I ended up working on with him again. And I was on the show and dancing, you know. We didn't really talk or act, but it was a lot of dancing. And then I went into radio. I was the youngest continuity director in the history of Storer Broadcasting. We had 12 radio stations all over the country. And I think I was 19 at the time. So I stopped the modeling and acting for a few years, and I thought I should, you know, do a real 9-to-5 job here. So this was great to be in radio, because radio at that time was not digital. We were playing records, we were playing albums. You learn how to do what you call as pull the books, which means I had to learn how to write copy, intros, tags. I had to work with the sales managers and the people that would come in and say, you know, we're selling coffee. We want to buy 3 spots for our coffee. And we'd say, well, do you want the morning run? Do you want the afternoon run? Do you want the evening run? How many spots do you want? How much money do you have? Do you want a 10-second spot, a 30-second spot, a 60-second spot, a 90-second spot? So all these things you learn, and then let's say they only want a 30-second spot. Well, they want to run it on the hour, then they want to run it again at the quarter hour, the half hour, the 3/4 hour, so at 6 o'clock, 6:15, 6:30, 6:45, and 7 o'clock. So you learn all that in and of itself.
It's a good school, actually,
It's
right?
excellent schooling. That in and of itself is its own education. So I started out as a receptionist, and they liked me. I was answering the phones, you know, good morning, KGBS Radio. So they said, well, we like her. Let's train her. And I was young, you see, so they were bringing me up.
Mindy, did you ever do any, now we jump a little bit, but did you ever do any commercials yourself when you started doing TV? Did you?
I wanted to. The problem with me was that at the time, I had commercial agents, and they said, "You're not the commercial type." And I said, "What's the commercial type?" And they said, "Commercial type is the everyday average-looking person, and you're not. You had to look like a mom or be a real mom, you know, look like a dad, look like a mechanic. You had to look like the everyday average guy because you were advertising a product that's going into people's homes that they need to feel familiar with. So if I'm standing up there and I'm tall and lithe and I'm modelly looking, you are what you are, and you have to come to that. So I would do beauty commercials. I would do car commercials. The cars, you know, look at my beautiful, elegant new car. You know, I did
And
car.
there's a beautiful woman on it.
I did car shows. Well, the whole concept is, you know, sex sells in everything. So if you want to sell cigarettes, if you want to sell cigars, if you want to sell a car, oh, don't you want that beautiful lady with you in that car? So they want what they would consider an attractive lady selling the car. Well, if you buy this car, you're going to get all the chicks. You know, well, if you have this cigarette and you're very sexy smoking it, you're going to attract that lady across the way having a martini. You know, that was that era, 50s, 60s, early 70s. So, you know, there's a slot. They put you in a slot. Well, this one can sell this product. This one can sell that product.
But when did you start getting the career moving with the acting?
I continued doing the advertising and the radio for a while. I loved it, I did, and I learned a lot. And I thought, well, if I ever need to go back to something, I can. But the itch started coming again, which was, I want to create. And I missed being on the sets, I missed traveling, I missed doing the things that you know, I was doing when I was modeling, and going places and doing things and meeting new people. So I got out of that, the 9 to 5. I was tired of sitting at a desk. And I got an agent, and the agent started sending me out for acting stuff. And I went to Universal Studios for a one-time job. And it was on a show called Switch with Robert Wagner and Eddie Albert. Sharon Gless was under contract to Universal at the time. This was her first, as we say, gig. And Charlie Callis, who was a comedian who was hysterical. So I went in, and I didn't have a resume. I didn't have 8x10s. I didn't have the proper pictures you're supposed to have. So as we say in the business, I completely winged it. I faked everything. So I guess I was a good actress. What I did is I took in my modeling portfolio, which was 11 by 14 pictures. We had big pictures in those days. So it was a big models portfolio book. They would turn these huge pages. And I went in with that, and I didn't know exactly what they were looking for, but at the time I had very dark hair. And they wanted someone that could look Greek to play the hostess in this bouzouki bar that they had downstairs from Robert Wagner's office, who played Pete and Mac, their character names were. So I went on the interview, and I walked in, and the producers were sitting behind the big desks, of course, which is very intimidating. And they walked in, they said, "Who are you?" I shook their hands, I told them, and they said, "Well, you have a great look. We like your look a lot. We're interviewing a lot of people. We're looking for a specific look, first of all." And then he said, "How are you with dialogue?" "Dialogue? I'm great. I'm the best." You know, and I did. I said, I'm great. I can handle anything. Give me anything, I can do it. He goes, "Okay, great." But he didn't have me read anything.
So you didn't do any casting or anything like that?
Well, no, there was casting, but he didn't have me read, you know, copy or do anything like read dialogue. He said, "But how are you with dialogue? Like, in case we throw something at you, can you do it?" I said, "Oh, God, I'm great. You can give me anything. Don't worry." And he said, "Where's your resume?" I said, "Oh, my God, my resume. I left it in the car." You don't leave resumes in a car when you go to an acting interview. The first thing you take are your pictures and resumes, right? So I looked at him straight in the face. I said, "Oh, my God, I left it in the car." I said, "I can go get it if you want." And he goes, "No, no, no, that's okay," like that. And he said, "What about your 8x10s?" I said, you know what? I ran out of 8x10s. I don't have any.
What is 8x10s?
8x10s means an 8x10 picture. Like these
okay,
are like
okay.
these are pictures, but they're 5x7.
Yes, okay.
So the
that way.
8x10. I said, you know, I ran out of my headshots, 8x10. They're being made now, but I can, you know, I can bring you one if you're still interested in another few days. Total lie, straight face. So, you know, and in my mind, I'm not lying, I'm acting, right? So he says, well, you have your models book there, don't you? I said, yes, sir, I do. And he goes, well, can I look at those? I said, sure. So I gave him the book. He flipped through the pictures. He goes, oh, these are great. He goes, we really like these. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'm very interested. He said, can I take a few of these pictures? And I said, well, those are the only ones I have. He goes, look, he said, we're professional here. You know, this is Universal Studios, the big guys, the honchos. And I'm thinking, well, am I going to get my pictures back? So he says, let me take your pictures, a few of them. Let me show them to the heads, the suits. These are the studio heads now. These are the big guys. So he says, I tell you what, we will either see you on the set in a couple of days, or I will get these pictures back to your agent. Is that fair enough? I said, yeah, that's fine. So I left thinking, oh, I completely blew it. I got in the car, completely blew it, everything. I went home, I called my agent. I said, I think I blew it. She said, why? I told her about the resume, the 8x10 pictures. She goes, don't worry about it. She says, if you gave them some pictures and they're looking for a look, maybe it'll work out. So I went about my business. A few hours later, the phone rings. I pick it up. It's my agent. She goes, you got the role. I said, you're kidding. She says, no, they love your look. They loved your attitude. They liked everything about you. I said, you are kidding. She said, no. So I went on the set. I met Robert Wagner. He was still married to Natalie Wood at the time.
And what year are we in here? Is it 74,
Well, this,
73?
no, yes, this was probably, well, this was 1975 because I started dating Elvis.
Okay, so it was
Prior
around
to
same
that,
time.
I had been living in Rome, Italy, modeling and acting.
Okay.
I had moved to Italy.
So the series
And
had been running for a while when you.
The series had
came
been
into
running
it,
about a year, maybe two.
Yeah, I think it's from 74, isn't it? Something like
Maybe,
that,
maybe.
I'm not sure.
Maybe. But when I started dating Elvis, because I was going back to Europe to stay, and he said, you're not going back, you're staying here, you're going to be my girlfriend.
We'll take Elvis in a second. First
Yeah.
we take Robert Wagner, because you meet him here in the
Yeah.
studio.
Oh, I had a huge crush.
And you just came back from Italy at that time. Is that how it was? When you
Well, no. What happened is I was living in Europe. I was living in Rome, Italy.
Yeah.
And I was modeling and acting, and I loved it. I wanted to stay. So I came home to Los Angeles to close up my apartment, because I had kept my apartment open, to close up the apartment, get the rest of my clothes, and sell my car. The week that I came home to do that is the week I met Elvis Presley.
So is that before or after this casting? And
No,
you're getting-
the casting came afterward.
After you met Elvis. Okay.
It had to, because I was going to stay here. I needed to.
Yeah.
I needed a job.
Okay,
you know?
so we're actually at the moment where you meet Elvis in some way, so we have to take Elvis.
Yeah.
We can't leave Elvis out of this.
No, you can't.
So actually, we should thank Elvis for that you ever got a part
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
TV series,
yeah.
because if it hadn't been for him, you would have been an
I would
Italian
have been-
actress or
I would have
model or
maybe done
whatever.
spaghetti westerns. Who knows?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Trinity or whatever they call
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Bud
No, and I
Spencer,
loved
yeah.
Italy. I mean, but I love Europe. I honestly am more European than I am American.
So let's go back a little bit. We have the casting, but before you did that casting, you actually ran into a guy called Elvis, and you saw him
Yeah.
actually. You had seen him before, actually, in a car.
Yes, yes.
Can you tell that story?
Prior to moving to Italy, I was driving in my car. I had a Jeep. My girlfriend was with me. Her name was Carol. And we were driving north on Laurel Canyon, and we were at the intersection of Sunset Boulevard. And across the street was the most beautiful car I'd ever seen. Now, in LA, you see stars everywhere. At that time, they're walking along the street, they're driving their cars, they're on their motorcycle. It's not a big deal to see Charlton Heston buying liquor at Turner's liquor store. I mean,
Did he do that a lot?
he did. I'll tell you a funny story. I was in Turner's liquor store. I think I was buying candy or something. I was a teenager. And I saw this really tall man. I mean, really huge, like 6'5" or something ridiculous. And he's got all this liquor, and he's taking it up to the checkout counter. And I thought, that's a big guy, and he's got all this liquor. And I thought, he's probably going to have a big party at his house or something. So he takes the liquor and he walks out the door. And as he walks out the door, I kind of see the side of his face. I went, God, that guy looks really familiar. I wonder who it is. So I look at him, and I'm kind of doing this as he's walking down the street. And I thought, I'm going to go outside. I kind of followed him outside, and he had a very nice car, got in a very nice car. And as he turned to get into the driver's seat, I kind of recognized him, but I couldn't think of his name. So I get home, I call my mom, I go, Mom, I said, I just saw this guy. I said, I can't think of his name. It was Moses. Moses was buying all this liquor. And she goes, oh, you mean Charlton Heston? I said, yeah. She said, oh, she says, really? I said, yeah, Mom. I said, is he an alcoholic? She says, no, I'm sure he was just having a party or something, But it was Moses there, on the corner of Doheny and Sunset buying all this liquor. And you just see this stuff every day. I mean, I remember seeing Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt. I mean, not in those days because they weren't around
but
then.
It's normal there because they live there, of course.
It's normal.
But let's go back to this guy in the car.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this incredible car. And as the car comes down this way, I want to see who's driving it. So as the car comes this way, I'm looking, and the first thing I see are the sunglasses. And I see the very long pointed nose. And I immediately recognize it's Elvis Presley. And all of a sudden, it just hit me in the head, like somebody just hit me. And I thought, oh my God. And I went like this, and I jerked the car over to the side of the road and parked it. My girlfriend Carol looked at me, she goes, what's wrong? She said, are you okay? I said, yeah. I said, but I just got the strangest feeling. I said, this energy hit me so hard. And I said, that was Elvis Presley. She said, yeah, so? I said, I got the strangest premonition, Carol, just now, that not only am I going to meet this man, I'm going to know him. Now, I was not an Elvis Presley fan. I saw his movies. My mom bought me a couple of 45s, Blue Hawaii.
But at that time, you had to be living in Siberia or China to not
know
Elvis Presley.
Exactly. Yeah. So, of course, I knew who he was. Of course, I went to see his movies. But I wasn't this fan. I didn't, I didn't follow him around. I knew who he was. He was driving one of the black Stunts Bearhawks he had 4. One was white, and then the other 3 were black. So he had one here, one in Memphis, as I later learned. But this is before I moved to Europe. Well, after that, I moved to Europe. I was modeling and acting. I moved to Rome. And I was there for a year or 2. And then I came back here to close up my apartment. I mean, I would come back intermittently and go back and forth, but I probably spent a good at least 2 years there. So when I came back that week to close up everything, I ran into somebody I knew who invited me to a Hollywood party.
Okay.
And he didn't tell me where it was, but that's how the story begins. We can go into that later if you want.
Before we talk about that, I just have one quick question. Did Elvis ever drive the car with you in it?
Not that Stunts, no. And I'm so mad.
And he never drove himself when you were with him?
Yeah, he drove himself.
Was he a good driver? That was my question.
Oh, he's a phenomenal driver. He drove my new car that he bought me in 1976, a year and a half after I met him. I asked him if we could drive the car from Vegas to Palm Springs, and I thought, gee, I get to drive my nice new 455 4-speed Hurst clutch white Trans Am. No. Elvis wanted to drive the car. He loved driving, and he loved muscle cars, same as I did.
And motorcycles.
Motorcycles, 3-wheelers. I'm the kind of girl that's a guy's girl. I like the cars. I like wrestling. I like the fighting. I love the kickboxing. I did.
I like all that. So you fit perfectly in there with the Elvis and the Memphis Mafia.
I actually did. Yeah. I actually did. I liked all the guys. I thought the guys were great. I didn't care that Elvis was with them or hanging out with them or they were in the room with us. I don't have that jealousy going, you know. I'm the girl, they're the guys, there's no competition. You
It
know?
actually looks, when you look at pictures with Elvis also, going back to driving,
Yeah.
that he loved driving. You know,
He loved
actually
it.
preferred the bodyguards and the others to sit in the back and let him steer the car.
He loved it.
It was only in the, it looks like it was only when he had his shows that he was sitting in the back, or else he actually preferred to sit in the front.
Well, he was exhausted after the shows.
Yeah.
I mean, I can
Which
tell you
makes
stories
sense,
like...
but else
yeah.
he would actually prefer driving himself,
Yeah,
right?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But of course, you know, if we talk, you can tell a little bit about this. We can move on to those afterwards, because people maybe don't realize how much energy you use when you are acting or if you're singing, standing in front of an audience.
It's a lot. First of all, there's a lot of emotion involved because you're giving of yourself. And this is why a lot of people cannot be actors or singers or dancers. It's self-expression. And if you are not able to just let yourself go and let your ego disintegrate, you can't have ego and be in the entertainment business. You have to just let it go. It's not about me. It's about you, the audience. It's about giving to an audience. People want to be entertained. I learned that at a very young age. People want to be entertained. It takes them away from the strife, the stress of life, things that are going on in their business, their work, their family, their loved ones, their kids. They have to have an outlet. What is the outlet? What do we normally do? We go to the theater, we go to a movie, we go to a concert, we read a book. We get out of ourselves. You have to put yourself on the back burner to regenerate, you know.
And Elvis was excellent when it came to entertainment.
The best. There is nobody better, and never will be. Never will be.
Yeah.
God gave him as a gift to this planet.
Yeah. And,
it's amazing.
And how long did it go from you saw him in the car and until you actually met him at this party you should go to?
Probably at least 2.5 years, I would say.
So it's that long time we talk
Oh,
about.
yeah. I'd forgotten about it, completely forgotten about it. I was, you know, I'm on to my other things. Living in Europe, I'm modeling, I'm acting, you know, I'm gone. I'm out of there. I'm doing other things.
Yeah. And we have talked about a lot of things, but we have to go back to where we actually were at a point before we went around and talked about all the other things, because you were in Hollywood or in LA. Yeah. And somebody said, there's a party, do you want to come?
Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, I went out one night to it was a private club that celebrities and actors go to, and a gentleman that I knew had an agency, a talent agency, and he came up to me and we knew each other, and he said, "Hey, Mindi, I haven't seen you around in a while." I said, "No, I've been living in Europe." And he said, "Oh, it's great to see you." He said, "Listen, now that you're back," he says, "I'd like to invite you to a party." I said, "Ron, I'm really not into it." I said, "It's a Hollywood party. I've been there, done that. I've been in Europe. I'm going to move there permanently." He said, "Oh," he said, "well, listen," he said, "if you change your mind," he said, "please, would you give me your number?" Now, I knew him, so it wasn't like just a random guy with a random phone number. I said, "Here," I said, "Ron, I'd known him for years." And he said, "Well, let me just keep in touch with you this week." And I said, "Okay." He called me every day. Now, I had just gotten in town. It was the first or second day, and I was going to stay about a week. So he called every day. So about the third day, he called. He said, "Listen," he said, "I really want you to come to this party." I said, "Ron, what is so special about this party?" He said, "Well, it's going to be at Elvis Presley's house." And again, nothing rang true to me. I just went, "Well, that's nice," but I still didn't, I hung up the phone. I started going about my business in the apartment. I went, whoa, whoa. And I remembered the light went on. Elvis, Mindi, remember your premonition. Maybe you should just go. Get dressed and just go. It's a party. I'm not thinking he's going to be there. It's at his house. But Ron would have told me he's going to be there. But, a lot of people rent out their houses or they lease them out for parties or whatever, right? So I just thought it's going to be a party, but just go. Maybe it might be fun to see his house. 144 Monteville. I buzz. They let me in. They had my name at the door. I take the, long driveway up. I knock on the door, 10,000 beautiful square foot house. One of the bodyguards answers the door. I have no clue who it was. I don't even remember. Oh, hi, you must be Mindi. I'm looking. How do you know my name? This is a party. You don't, unless, you know.
Do you know everybody's name?
Right, exactly, thank you. So unless you have the list, and my picture, how are you going to know that's me? I don't think so. He didn't have a list, he didn't have a photograph of me, but he said, well, you must be Mindi. And I said, I looked at him very curiously and I said, yes, I am. He says, well, come on in. I walk in the house, I take a quick look around. No DJ, no people, no party, no food, nothing. Now, normally in today's world, you're going into a strange house like that and you don't know whose it is, and then you were led into a room full of guys, you're leaving.
You'll be running out.
You'll be running out. In those days, no. Plus, being in the entertainment industry, doing stunt work, being as physical as I am, I really don't, there's not a lot I fear. I can pretty well take care of myself in any situation.
But then again, if it's 5 guys, 6 guys, and
oh yeah,
then
well,
it could be a problem even you're good in karate.
Right, but this wasn't even that. This was like 13 to 15 guys, and they're all sitting around each side of the room and the back of the room. Now they walk me in and they go, hi, and I go like, hi, you know. They sit me on the couch with the coffee table in front of me. And they start firing questions at me. So what's your name? Where do you go to school? What's your family like? Do you have brothers and sisters? Are you religious? What religion are you? Are you spiritual? What are your hobbies? What do you like to do?
Did they ask you all these questions?
Oh, for an hour.
Didn't you ask them, is
No,
it a job interview or
no,
what?
no, but it was definitely an interview.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when I
Who
reflect
asked all the
back,
questions? Do you remember which? Was it
all the
everybody
guys,
or?
all the guys,
Okay.
all the guys. They were just firing questions at me. And I'm just sitting there very composed like this. 24 years old, March either 12th or 13th of 1975.
Didn't you think, what's going on
I
here?
did, but I try to be very cool under pressure. You have to be, because otherwise you don't want people reading you. So you have to keep that kind of face. That's just, yeah.
And you were all alone? You didn't have any girlfriend with you or anything like that? All alone?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you have to remember, I grew up alone.
Yeah.
You know, from what
But
we're
then
talking
again,
about
going
my
to a strange
history.
house that should be Elvis's, you didn't know it for sure that it was Elvis's house when you arrived
No,
there,
but you
did
see, here's the thing. By then, I'd been living in Europe. I traveled a great deal. I was at a very young age, very worldly. At 18, I had dated David Tebbutt, who was the president of NBC Television.
Yeah.
I was sitting at a table with Roger Moore on my left, the actor,
James Bond.
James Bond, having dinner with him, 18 years old. David is on my right, the president of NBC Television. You don't get any bigger than that. Henry Mancini, the most incredible, musical conductor and writer of music, Henry Mancini, and his wife. And I don't remember who all was there. I mean, it was just Hollywood elite, elite, elite. I'm 18 years old. I'm used to this. I grew up in it, you see. So for me to come into a house, I'm thinking, okay, I know Ron. He's not going to set me up in something that's really funky. I knew the guy that had wanted me to come to the party. So I knew something was up, but I didn't know what. I was ready to walk. I was ready to walk out of the house, okay? But I'm a pretty sassy girl, you know. I can pretty much take care of myself, and you know, I really was not concerned. I just thought, well, this is really weird. I'm gonna see what this is.
They're very curious guys, you thought. That's
Oh yeah.
that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was for an hour and nothing happened? or what?
Nothing happened, and so I sat there, and then it became very quiet. And then 2 of the guys, I don't remember which 2, got up and walked out. Well, I learned later they went upstairs to get Elvis. He had been upstairs waiting for me, watching me drive up, because he knew he had a date. I didn't know I had a date with Elvis Presley. I didn't know he was going to be there. I was going to a Hollywood party with a lot of people and food and drink and music and, you know, a party.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, the guys go upstairs, and they had the TV on, I'm watching the TV, and all of a sudden, I
You
feel
feel
this
it again.
energy, this kinetic energy, and it felt exactly the same as it felt when he passed me. And I went, what is that? And I turned to my right, and there's Elvis standing in the doorway. He had his little white tennis cap on, not the Elvis Presley, but Elvis Presley. The guy, country boy, Elvis Presley. Not Elvis Presley with his jewelry and everything. No. This was somebody.
Just a private one.
This is somebody
comfort.
I didn't know. Yeah, private. Little tennis cap on, hair disheveled. He had his sweatsuit on that, you know,
These training suits.
zipped
Yes.
up and down. It was a light baby blue, and then I think he had a dark blue or white stripe, you know, down the side. And he had his long, thin Tipperillo, I think, in his left hand with a yellow tip on it. And then he had his arm up on the, you know, the doorway. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he said, "Hi, honey." He said, "Sorry I'm late, but so were you." And I don't know why it hit me, but again, I'm picking up on this guy. This was funny to me. I didn't take it seriously. Now, anybody else could have thought, what do you mean I was late? They could have been very defensive about it. See, there is always a way to take something. You can take it positively, or you can take it negatively. I choose to look at it positively whenever I can. So he just struck me as being funny. He had a delivery. He could have been a stand-up comic easily. His delivery was unbelievable. His timing was impeccable, natural, impeccable timing this man had. He could remember jokes. He told jokes. He was funny all the time. I got him immediately. He looked at me. I was laughing. I threw my head back in hysterics. He looked at me like very curiously. He started laughing, then it broke the ice, and then all the guys in the room started laughing. It was like, whew, because they didn't expect him to come downstairs and go, "Well, sorry I'm late, but so were you." You know, but the way in which he said it was funny to me. And the way in which he meant it was funny. You see, he meant it funny. I picked up that it was funny. Anybody else could have picked up, well, that's kind of rude.
It could have been a very short date then.
And there would have been no date.
Yeah.
So he saunters into the room, looks at the guys kind of like, I got this. Yeah? Because already we broke the ice. Already I'm laughing at his joke. He comes around the coffee table. I'm sitting here. He's standing up here. He puts his arm out to me and he goes, "Hi, honey, I'm Elvis." And I look up at him and I go, "Hi, I'm Mindi." Calm, no big deal. He goes, "May I sit down?" I said, "Of course." I move over. Elvis sits down. We never stopped talking. Within the first hour, he said, one of the first things he said to me, in fact, he said, "I was waiting for you." I said, "I had no idea." He said, "Nobody told you?" I said, "No." He said, "Nobody told you you were coming to have a date with me?" I said, "No." He said, "What did they tell you?" I said, "I was told by our mutual friends that I was coming to a party at your house." He looked at me, he goes, "Those son of a bitches." Like that. He loved to swear. Always, "Son of a bitch. Oh, son of a bitches."
But he didn't swear a lot when he was younger. It came later.
Oh,
I
no,
remember
no.
Sonny West
Oh.
once told me that, you know,
His mother
that he
would
didn't like when Sonny
never-
was
no.
cursing, you know, and he told Red many times,
No.
"Red, you have to have a talk with him. I don't like this."
Well, it was his mama,
Yeah.
Gladys. She would never allow it. Are you kidding me?
But he did that a lot later.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And he was funny. When he swore, it was funny to me because he did it in such a way that it was funny. And I think anybody in his group, in his entourage, would tell you it was funny. I mean, there were times when, don't get me wrong, and I was there, when his temper flared. I mean, he could have a temper, forget about it. Don't we all? I do. I am the sweetest, most down-to-earth person ever, but do not get me riled. We all have that.
But it's good
We're
to have a
people.
temper, right?
Well, of course, you have to, first of all, you have to set boundaries in your life. If you don't set boundaries, people will walk all over you and take advantage of you. And that's with all of us. He was no different. He was a human being, no different than anybody else, but absolutely blessed in so many ways. He got some of the better gifts that the rest of us did not get, because it was supposed to be to him. He was the one. He was the chosen one to get those incredible gifts from God.
Yeah.
You know?
I would like to ask you a question about, you said we talked and talked.
Yeah.
How was it to talk with Elvis? Was he a good listener? Was he good asking questions, or did he tell a lot about himself?
He was an incredible listener. He was so interested in what other people had to say. He was very intent. And he made you feel like you were the only person in the room. There could be 20 people in the room. Nobody else existed but you. He made you feel you were the only woman. He made you feel he was madly in love with you, whether he was or not. You were the only person that mattered. He was very, very centered and very disciplined. That came a lot from his reading, from his spirituality and the books that he read, how to be a better person, how to, there were so many things. But also, so much of it came from the discipline of karate. When you do karate or karate, and you do any form of it, it is very, very disciplined. It's a very disciplined art, which I knew because I had been taking Shotokan. He'd been taking Kempo. And of course, we had that in common. We talked and talked and talked about all the things we had in common. So this ceased to be Elvis Presley for me immediately. This became somebody that we just absolutely connected. And the discipline that he had was the discipline in honing in on you, looking straight in your eyes, not even blinking, and listening to you with intent that you probably never experienced. There was none of this looking to see who's coming in the room or who's behind you, or, there was no disinterest. What you had to say was important. I don't care what it was important to him. And he made you realize that, and he made you feel that. And I defy anybody else that ever knew the man or met him to say differently. He was very, very centered in that way. And again, from different disciplines.
And you were lucky, of course, you shared a lot of interest, but was he also the kind of guy who, even though it was something that did not have his interest, he made it his interest because he was together with a person?
Because he wanted to learn. He wanted to learn everything. He was probably the most voracious reader I'd ever met. If I left the room, invariably I'd walk back in and he'd be reading something, whether it's a newspaper, a book, a piece of paper. He was always reading. He was just, he wanted to funnel knowledge. He loved books. Loved books. I love reading. I love books to this day. And for him, it was so important to learn. So what you had to say, maybe it was something you could learn from. And one of the things I learned so much from him, but one of the things he said to me in the very beginning, on actually our first date that night, which was, hours into the morning, of course, he said, Mindi, he said, we are all teachers and we are all students. He goes, me included. He says, I have a lot to learn from everybody. He said, the poorest man can teach you something. Don't ever dispel something because somebody doesn't look a certain way, or because they don't drive a certain car, or because they're not wearing certain clothes, or they didn't have a 4-year education. He said all of this. He said, everybody has a story. Everybody has a life, and you can learn something from everyone. And I never forgot it. So everyone to him was important. It wasn't just one person. It wasn't the poor man. It wasn't the rich man. It wasn't, the producer that could, produce his record, Felton Jarvis. It wasn't. It was everybody that the man came in contact with.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And regarding the reading, he read a lot of books, which many people who's not Elvis fans is not aware of. But actually, when he went on tour, he had a whole suitcase full of books, so
Black.
he never ran out of books he could read, right?
Yeah. On our first date, In that first hour to 2 hours, we talked first about Hawaii. He loved Hawaii. I grew up in Hawaii. I did all my, I did stunt work. I was gymnastic. I was all this. He loved that. I grew up riding horses from the time I was 7. He rode horses. I loved to sing. He loved to sing. I loved to dance. He didn't really dance, but in his movies he did. We just had so much in common. Then, the last thing was, are you a religion? Well, yes, I'm a Christian. I was born Catholic, but I converted to Christianity. He said, well, why? We got in huge discussions about religion, theology. He studied Zen, Buddhism, Judaism, every form of Christianity. There are thousands of forms of Christianity, Catholicism, anything you could think of, he studied. He was voracious about religion and wanting to know why people thought this way, when this community of people thought this way, and this country of people thought that way. It is, for me, is the same way, fascinating, because you become what you are trained to become by your parents, by your church, by your school. So you have all this that's been infiltrated into your brain. When did you ever stop and say, well, what do I want to learn? Well, I don't believe that. That doesn't resonate with me. You see, Elvis was a very free thinker. So even though he was brought up Baptist in the beginning and then Pentecostal when he moved to Memphis, he was a very free thinker. He had an interest in everything. He was very worldly. When you look at pictures of this little poor boy in the glasses and the jeans and things that he never wore after that, because he said those are for poor people. He never wore jeans. All these kind of things. He shouldn't have been that free thinking, because in the South in those days it's very clustered. You are a Baptist, you go to church, you think this way, you think that way. You're very boxed in. And I think in many ways Elvis played that game, but his mind was outside the box, for sure. And he knew it. And that's why, he had many quotes, like, I can't quote them exactly, but something to the effect of, you never walked a mile in that man's shoes, son, don't disparage somebody. I mean, because he knew. But getting back to the books, when he offered me the car and I turned him down, he said, your car's all bashed in the back. I said, nope, can't take a car. He was shocked. Then he said, we called Al. Al, bring me in my jewelry box. I'm thinking, jewelry box? Well, guy has a jewelry box. Al brings in this huge black box. He sets it down. I'll never forget this. He sets it down on the coffee table. Elvis opens it up, and he takes tray by tray. First tray out, second tray out, third tray out. I think there were 3, maybe 2. And then on the bottom. So I'm looking at these trays of rings. And he goes, honey, I want you to have a ring. He goes, pick one, pick 2. And I looked at him incredulously and I went, no, thank you. And he goes, what? And I said, no, thank you. I don't want a ring. He couldn't believe it. Nobody turned Elvis down. Nobody. They all took cars. Everybody took rings. Everybody took, right? And he wanted you to have it. It made him happy to give. He loved giving. He wanted you. His biggest thing was, I want to see your face light up. I want to see that smile. I want to make you happy. Because I can, right?
Yeah.
And, he's thinking 3 wise men bringing scents, myrrh, and whatever else to baby Jesus. And he's bringing, here's some jewelry, here's all this gold jewelry. And I'm like, no, and he goes, why? He goes, nobody turns me down. He goes, why? And I looked at him, and I already liked the guy. Forget Elvis. We'd already been talking, and I just liked him. And I looked and I said, first of all, Elvis, I wasn't raised that way. I was not raised to take expensive gifts from a man. Because in my time, that correlated something. You take something from somebody, he wants something in return. And I wasn't thinking that about him, but that's just the way I thought. I was trained to think that way. So here it was again, trained, right? And I thought, no. And in my mind, I thought, and I actually said this to him, I said, look, I said, if for some reason we would start to date or something down the road, and you offer something like that to me again down the road, that may be a different situation. I said, but we're not boyfriend and girlfriend. We're not dating. We're not in a relationship. And he looked at me and he goes, fair enough. Fair enough.
That was a new experience for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the night continued. Other things went on.
Did you stay with the boys in the room, or did you go for yourself at one point in the evening?
Yeah. So what happened is the guys had already left. Well, no, actually, a few of them were still sitting in the room. And at that point, he said to Al, he goes, okay, he says, you can take all this away. Because he was trying to impress me in a way that I wasn't being impressed. If somebody wants to impress me, be you. Be who you are. Be your truth. Speak your truth. I can spot phony a mile away.
But he managed that too, right?
I saw through it. I saw through it. And I never told him. People have asked me, they said, did you ever tell him that you had a premonition that you passed him in the car? And I said, no, I never told him.
But also, I mean, from the talk you had, he made impression of you. He didn't need the jury to make the impression.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so what happened is the guys, he asked them, you guys, you know, you can go. You can leave the room now. He was comfortable with me.
Yeah.
So
And was that in the living room you were sitting?
it was in the
or?
den. It was in the
okay,
den.
yeah.
The den. I have pictures of the house, and I still have pictures of the den. And it's really, it's nice to be able to look back on those pictures and say, oh my God, that's where I sat. That's where he was. That's where the guys were. There's the TV. There's the desk. Everything, you know. So he said to the guys, you know, you can go. We're good. We're good here. You can go. And so he said, what would you like to eat? Would you like to drink something? And I said, no, I'm good. He goes, and then, you know, after talking in the karate, he says, you love karate, huh? He said, most girls don't like karate. I go, I love karate. I'm taking karate. He knew I was like a guy's chick. He's like, wow, you like firearms, you like horses, you ride, you do all this stuff. He goes, we have all the same things in common. I said, yeah, we do. And you have to remember, he wasn't Elvis Presley. He was just Elvis Presley at home, chilling, baseball, tennis little cap on, not looking like, I mean, obviously handsome as could ever be, but he wasn't, you know, he didn't have the jewelry, he didn't have the, you know, the blue sun shirt,
right?
and just relaxing.
Yeah.
That's how he relaxed at home. Yeah. So then he said, honey, he said, I'd like to do something for you. Oh, already, always wanting to do something for people. I said, well, what is that? And he said, I'm going to surprise you. Because obviously, if he told me what it was, I'm not going to accept it. So he goes, I'm going to surprise you. And I said, okay, like that. And he goes, you just sit here. And he went in the other room. And later I found out he went to get Dave Hebler, Sonny and Red West. And he went upstairs and he put on his gi, which is his karate gi, and one of his black belts. And he came downstairs to this long hallway, kind of, in large area where they could move, you know. And he said, honey, stand right there. I said, okay. And all of a sudden, he goes into what they call a kata, which means you stand, and it's before you perform your, you know, your sequences and your, and all, you know, whatever, and your roundhouse and all these things. So he's standing there and he's meditating in his kata. And I realize now what he's going to do. So he does this to Sonny. And Sonny and Red come at him like they're going to fight. And he starts going through these moves and these kicks and these roundhouses and these back, you know, back kicks and all this stuff. And then, you know, Dave is over here, Sonny's over here, Red's over here, and he's putting on a private karate exhibit for me. And I thought, wow, this is great, you know. And I wasn't thinking, again, I'm not thinking Elvis Presley. You know, this is just my date for the night. This guy's great. And he did that whole thing. He went through that whole number, and then he kind of, you know, comes back and okay. And then he comes over to me and goes, how'd you like that? I went, I loved it. That was great. And I gave him a big hug. And he looked at me, you know, because that impressed me more than the car and the joy. And I looked at him, I go, that was great. He goes, you like that? And I said, yeah. And I gave him a big hug, and he hugged me back, and he goes, I like you. And I went, I like you too, you know. And it was the beginning of, I didn't know what, you know, and I wasn't even thinking, here I'm leaving at the end of the week to move back to Europe. I just thought, this is a great night. What a really fun night this is. And I have to call Ron and thank him. You know, this turned out to be really fun and really sweet. And at that point, he said, honey, he said, I want you to come up to my room. And already, I wasn't even thinking anything. I could already tell. And he said, it's not what you think. And I looked at him, I went, I know. He goes, what do you mean you know? I said, I know. He goes, you do? I said, yeah, I do. And he said, okay, well, come on. So I went up to his bedroom. Of course, nothing happened. And he sits me on the edge of the bed. And he goes, well, he says, you know, I've been here a few days. I've been recording. I said, oh, okay. He said, I've been recording at RCA. Well, that was the last time he ever recorded at RCA. And it was a song he just finished called Trouble.
It's a great song.
My favorite song, besides his gospel and How Great Thou Art and all of that. And it became my favorite song, not because he sang it, or not because he sang it to me that night, but because it's a great rockabilly, rockin', hard beat song. And I love music like that. Travis Tritt, the country singer, did that song. He did a different rendition of it, and I fell in love with his rendition too. So at the end of this long room, which was his bedroom, the master bedroom at the house, he had the tape machine, you know, the old tape machines that go round and round. And he turned that machine on. You know, it was reel to reel in those days. Everything was reel to reel. So he turns the machine on, and he said, I just finished recording this song. He goes, tell me if you like it. He said, you'll be the first person to ever hear it. I thought, that's pretty good. That's pretty nice. He starts singing to me privately and goes into it. Not like he would on stage.
So his vocal was not on the track? Or
no.
Was he singing along with his vocal? Okay.
He sang to me. It was just the track.
Okay.
He had another, you know, piece that had him singing, but he put on just the track.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then he sang it to me privately. And I was a little bitty baby when my daddy hit the skids. Mama hit the skids. Daddy had a, no. I was a little bitty baby when my daddy hit the skids. Mama had a time trying to raise 9 kids. Da-da-da-da-da, because it was impolite. And then something, da-da-da-da, just to treat you right. And it was Trouble. And then later on stage he'd go, right? And I fell in love with that song. And he finished it. He said, do you want to hear it again? I said, you bet I do. And he sang it again. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. He goes, so you really like it? I said, yeah. He said, do you think I should do it on my next tour? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Many people must be jealous of you just for that, you know.
I know. I know.
And then we don't talk about all the other things.
I know. Trust me, I've
So
been
that
living
night,
it.
because Elvis was always awake, people maybe don't know it unless they're fans. He was awake late evening and until the morning, and then he slept.
Yes.
So
and I'm
was he singing all night?
I'm a night person too.
Okay, that's
See,
perfect.
so again, we had that in common.
That's perfect.
It's no problem. So now it's 12 o'clock, right?
And he sang it a couple of times, the song.
Yeah. So now he's thinking how, you know, he's making the date up as he goes along, which is fine. I'm just there. He says, excuse me a minute, walks outside, goes downstairs, talks to a couple of the guys, comes back upstairs. He said, are you good? Would you like a soft drink? You want a Coke? You know, anything to drink? No, I'm good. Everything's fine. We sit down, we talk again about a little bit about his life, a little bit about my life. He's opening up a little bit, but he's very private, right? So he's not just going to open up and be a can of beans, as they say. But he's beginning, you know, just as the night's wearing on, he's beginning. About an hour later, hour and a half later, and we're still talking and, you know, what do you like? What do you like to do? What movies do you like? TV shows do you like? All that. He never said, "Do you have my record?" Never. It was never about him. Never about him. It was always about, what do you like? Where have you traveled to? What do you like to do? All those kinds of things. I hear this knock on the door. Come on in. One of the guys comes in with this huge box. He goes, here, boss, here's what you wanted. Go through and, make sure everything's there. So Elvis looks, he's looking this, and he goes, okay, I got it, thanks, see ya. He says, honey, come here. He goes, I want you to look in there. I said, okay. Ton of books. Ton of books. He said, pick one up. I said, anyone? He goes, anyone. Now, prior to that, we've been reading the Bible, too, a little bit. So I pick up one of the books. And he said, open it. I open it. And he goes, start reading to me. I started reading to him. And as I'm reading, I'm realizing what I'm reading. And he said to me, do you realize what you're reading? I said, yes. He goes, what's that word I just said? I said, realize. He goes, no, but what is that word? Realize. He said, no. He said, you're reading with real eyes. Therefore the word realize. He loved to take words and cut them up to make other words as to what that word might really mean. So when you realize something, you're seeing things with real eyes. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
How many of us think of that when we're talking? I didn't.
No.
Very few people do. Man is deep. I mean, not just that, that's the surface. The man is so deep, you have no idea. So he says, you're reading with real eyes, and do you realize what you're reading? I said, yes, I'm reading spirituality. He said, good. He said, turn the page. I turn the page, start reading. He takes a pen out, and he says, what is meaningful to you here? I said, well, I really like this. He said, take the pen and underline it. I said, no, you underline it for me. He took the book and he underlined it. He goes, now, that's what we're going to do. He said, these books are for you. He said, you won't take a car, you won't take any jewelry. Will you accept the spiritual books? I looked at him, I went, absolutely. Yes, I will.
Do you still have those books? That's just
yes, and I brought some today.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
And that's one thing he was known for, that he was underlining when he was reading, because he could go around for a long time just thinking about that sentence, It must have been a very special date for you. I guess it's the first time you were on a date with a guy where you were reading the Bible and books together, right?
Yeah, but see, for most girls, they could have cared less. They weren't interested. For most girls, their whole thing is, oh, he's gorgeous. Was he a good kisser? What I wouldn't give to be in bed with him. Never crossed my mind. Didn't cross his mind.
No. But it was a special date, right? Not that it was Elvis, but sitting and reading the Bible and reading spiritual books.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other connection we had came later, and it did. But the point being is, when you are getting to know somebody, it's not about sex. It's not about jumping somebody's bones. It's about connecting with another soul. It's about connecting with a heart. It's about connecting to another human being. That's what it's about, and that's what it should be about. So we immediately connected on that. He knew it, and I knew it. And we read the rest of the night. He talked about books. He said, Mindi, he said, you're on the path. He said, and you and I are going to read these books. We're going to study these books together. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we're going to study them for the night, and it'll be great. I'm not thinking anything down the road for the future, We did that. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning comes. I'm not even tired. We're just like, our energy levels are bouncing off the walls in the bedroom. We're just reading. We're just having a great time. They bring up water. They bring up coffee. We're having a great time. Nothing's happening. 7 o'clock, I look at my watch. I go, Elvis. I said, I really better go. He goes, why? Why do you have to go? Can't you stay? I said, no, I've got to go. So finally, he walks me downstairs and he said, take your books. And I took this huge vat of books down to my car. And he walked me out to my car and he said, am I going to see you tonight? And I looked at him and I thought, yeah. I said, I'd love to see you again. I'd love to come back tonight. He goes, I tell you what, he goes, I'll pick you up. And I said, okay. And he said, give the guys your address and I'll pick you up tomorrow and, you know, we'll let you know what time, whatever. I said, okay, great. And I gave him a hug and I kissed him on the cheek and I said, thank you very much. I said, this has been a really lovely evening. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. He looked at me, he goes, I have too, like that. And I drove off and I drove home. When I got home, it was about 7:15, 7:20. I only lived 15, 20 minutes away from Holmby Hills. So I drove home. I drive home. The phone is ringing. I'm like, who the heck is calling me at like almost 7:30 in the morning? I pick up the phone. I said, hello? He goes, hi, honey. It's Elvis. I said, hi. I said, what are you doing? So I just wanted to call you and see if you got home all right. I said, I did. Thank you. It was so sweet. I was so touched. I was so touched. I said, thank you. I said, I really appreciate that. We ended up talking for 2 hours more on the phone.
It's amazing. And was it, when you talked, was it mainly about the spiritual things that you had in common, or was it all kinds of things?
All kinds of things. But the bond that really formulated for both of us that night was the spirituality. And I didn't know Larry Geller at the time. And of course, I later found out that Larry was kind of the male part, you know, of his spirituality, and that Larry had introduced him to a lot of these books and got him really, really on the path as well. But Elvis had been searching. He'd been looking. And I believe truly that God brought Larry to Elvis. Not, you know, maybe in the beginning as his hairdresser, but of course, much more than that, as we know now. Everybody and everything happens for a reason. They were meant to meet. They were meant to be together as friends, as buddies. You know, the other guys weren't into it, and that's okay. But they had their purpose and their friendship with Elvis, and each guy had their friendship with Elvis in a certain way, and Elvis loved each and every one of them for his own reasons. You know, most of the guys, you'll hear him say, well, he was my best friend. Well, yeah, Elvis probably was your best friend, but who was Elvis's best friend? You know, it works both ways. That doesn't necessarily mean that you were the closest to him, but he liked you or he loved you as a buddy.
Maybe he had many good friends.
He did.
In his own eyes.
He did.
Yeah. And Mindi, we could talk for hours.
I know.
More. You know, it's great. I love it. Then
everybody says you've got to write the book. But you see, he didn't ever want me to write a book. He said, you don't talk about what's private between a man and a woman. You don't talk about what happens, you know, at Graceland or on the road. It's very special between two people. Yeah. I would never think to say things that I've heard, because I don't read these books. I don't read any of them. But his fans have come to me and said, did you read what so-and-so put? Did you read what so-and-so put? We're very angry. We don't like that person anymore because this person said this. And I'm like, what can you do, you know?
That's true. We have to end the program, but I want to just go fast through the career. You continued making the TV series.
Yeah.
You made other movies.
I did other films, other TV shows. I hosted. I worked on a show called The Price is Right. We finished the TV series. So I've continued to work. You know, I'm not someone that is...
Did you go back to do theater also again? Or?
I really didn't go back to theater. I'd like to. Theater scares me, though, now as I'm older, because it's so in the moment. You drop a line or you freeze, you're dead. Yeah. You can't freeze on the stage. You cannot freeze in the theater. You have to really be in the moment. And that's why I believe that theater actors are the best actors, because you really have to know your dialogue. You have to know your lines. You have to be in the moment. You don't have 10 more takes. You can take it over. You can't. You have somebody off stage feeding you a line, you know, like let's say I'm supposed to say, well, how did you get there? And let's say I freeze. Somebody off stage is going, how did you get there? How did you get there? Oh, so how did you get there? You know, I think now that I'm older and now that I'm really much more in the moment and I'm really able to hone in on what is important in that moment, I'm living in the moment more. So I think I'd be a lot better in theater than I was as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has been great talking to you.
It's been good talking
Great
to you too.
stories.
I
Love it.
hope your people that follow you enjoy them. And, you know, I wish all of his fans nothing but love. I love all of his fans. He loved them. And I just want to tell them to keep raising him up in love and respect. And we're not important. He is the only one that's important. Elvis is why we're all here. I'm not an important person, only he is. I don't puff myself up about that.
Well, thank you very much to share your memories with Elvis with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. After 40 long years, it's a long time.
And to all of you, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again another time. Thanks.
Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in?